Hey guys, my name is Loco Doco, the better looking host of Listen Loco, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Damonte, who was obviously for a number of years a professional mid laner in the LCS, and he's now the performance coach of FlyQuest. So obviously I always like to start these interviews way back, but I actually have a different angle for you, Damonte, which is, because a lot of people actually won't know what the old challenger scene was like back in the day, and in the eras when there really was promotion, it wasn't just you had to like prove yourself and get signed. I notice a lot of the discussions in the LCS now are about things like what is the talent pipeline? Like, is the collegiate scene healthy? Do players get into academy? Do they get developed there? You know, are there good players who are from NA who can come up? So I want to ask you was this, back in the day when you began trying to become pro and you were entering sort of this semi-pro challenger circuit where, you know, it is the path to pro back then. If you get good, you can potentially qualify directly. What was actually League like back then? Like, for example, if I asked you, like, would your friends back then have known League, the game? Was it actually kind of like at the time, was it considered like a social phenomenon? Was it a la like Fortnite later and stuff? What was it like back then?
Dude, was it a social phenomenon? I think it was, honestly, because I remember being in high school and like when I first was getting like high rated in League, just like not even anything to do with the pro scene yet, but people would know that I was like Diamond 1.
Oh, right. Okay.
And like, I mean, my high school was cool because we had like a League of Legends club. So like it was definitely kind of known in the school.
Right.
So like it was a phenomenon in that sense because everyone's like, what the hell? Like, how are you Diamond 1 in this game?
Oh, they were even impressed. Like they knew what to be Diamond was. Like they knew you meant you were good.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there was like a tryhard community at my high school,
Right.
which was really sick. So like those people like knew, but also I wasn't like back then I was playing football and baseball. So
Right.
people were like, what the hell are you doing playing League and how are you
Right.
this fucking good?
Okay.
So that was funny. Yeah.
Because actually, that's another thing I want to ask. You actually also, I always in my brain put you in the same box. Obviously, you're someone in your era of peers. There's Golden Glove as well. Like, these are guys where, like, to me, you're not like only nerds. Like, you have like the jock side too. You're all working out all the time. You're always emphasizing health. Did you always have both sides to your personality?
Yeah, I when I grew up, like my older brother, he always had an Xbox, Sega, like all the game consoles. We played everything, and having that older brother drove, I think, the competitive side of me. It was just like, no matter what I kind of did, I wanted to be better than him at basically everything. So I played baseball and football with him, and then we'd come home, play Halo on the Xbox for like hours at night, and kind of just like run through the rotation of just everything that we could do competitive.
One thing that I do find is fun is, like a lot of other players who made it to the top, on the way you got to play with a whole bunch of people who were pros themselves later, but in these challenger teams. So what I do want to ask you about is this, because I actually have found this guy fascinating. He's just forgotten now. Obviously, Grig, he had other names as well, remember? Right? This player, there's a reason why TSM multiple times tried to make this guy their starting jungler. Like, he's someone who actually probably should have had a much better career, but he had like injuries and basically he's one of those people where the timing was just terrible on certain things in his career, right? When you played with him, was he a prospect at this point in time? Was he like someone that seemed like he was going to the pro level?
For sure. I think playing with Grig, or Grigne, he was back then, he was like this young kid. I mean, the first split that I even played with him, we played on open qualifier teams together. We played in NACL teams together. But like the very first time we actually played on a team together, he was still in high school. So he played remote while the rest of the team was in a gaming house back in like 2016. And everyone kind of knew this guy was like the next up and coming like jungler. And yeah, playing with him back then, I don't think our strategy was very good, but like our mid jungle combo was definitely the best in amateur, just based off like pure skill, honestly.
Oh, was it actually like hands? I was wondering, like, was he supposed to be like a brain jungler or something? What was kind of his style?
I'm trying to think exactly what he was playing. Like, I think he was good at I want to say it was like Graves back then.
Oh, right.
But
So it sounds like a mechanics player then. Right.
Yeah, he was good at Graves, but I always remember his Olaf. Like he was like
Right.
this like farm and then just destroy everyone. I think the open qualifier that we played, where we actually qualified for the NACL and got our spot, we just played like Orianna Olaf every single game. Just farm and then like throw the ball on him and go in, and we went like 12 wins, 0 losses in the tournament. It was kind of simple back then.
What did you actually think about that scene back then where there was this premise that if the team got good, I mean, first of all, as you see by a lot of the old Liquipedia and et cetera, if you look, a lot of the talent seems like they collect together into the good teams. And by the time you get to the promotion, usually even the teams that don't qualify are only like a tiny bit worse. What did you think about that system? Like, did it actually seem like you could qualify directly to LCS? Did you think it was plausible?
For sure. I think for me, I saw a lot of people before me, they would like qualify for the LCS and then instantly get kicked or their team would get spot out. And like there's a lot of weird stuff in that. So it wasn't like, oh, if I qualify with this team, I'm guaranteed to go LCS with this team and I'll be there forever. But just winning that tournament alone kind of got enough eyes on you to be like, okay, this guy, if he's not going to play LCS now, he will play soon or he'll get his shot soon.
One question I do have before we get to the LCS period is just this. I saw that there was like a one-off tournament when you played with what was basically like the Cloud9 Challenger team that had all those people, like it had like the legendary people like Hyon, but then it had like the up-and-comers like Licorice, Zays. What happened to that? Was just a stand-in? Were you trying to be in this team for real? What was going on?
So I would say this is right before my career really took off. Cloud9 Challengers had this team with Deftly, Zazal, and Licorice. And I was already pretty good friends with these guys before. And I think there was like interesting stuff going on between like C9 and this team E United back then. Like those core three were like the biggest prospects, I would say, of the league back then. And then like I was there with them as well, but they didn't pick me up or I don't exactly remember what exactly happened. So I was kind of like on the outskirts of the team, you know, but I was still there. And C9 got a sponsorship request to send their whole like LCS team to I think it was Sao Paulo or Buenos Aires.
Oh, right, that's cool. Oh, that's dope.
Yeah,
okay.
so they just hit me up. They're like, "Hey, do you want to go to Argentina?" Nice. And I was like 18 years old, and I was like fuck yes, please. So they brought me, and they were gonna originally bring Grig as well. Grig was like the fifth member of our team. Like I think a lot of people would consider that like C9 Challenger roster was like the biggest amateur team and players coming up. Yeah. But then Armao or Grig, he was still in school, so he couldn't go to Argentina. So they were just like, okay, Hai, I think, wasn't playing on the main team at that point. So he came to Argentina with us and jungled for us, which was like, yeah, it was that
super sounds pretty surreal. Like, just being in Argentina playing with Hai. Okay.
Yeah, it was insane. Like it was my first time doing anything really league related, at least like as a professional.
Okay.
And to have Hai next to me and then be in Argentina and these fans actually like thought we were cool because we were on C9. I was like, this is completely mind blowing. I can't understand. And even like going on a 10-hour flight, like 10-hour flight was crazy to me.
Sure. By the way, even though, look, it's up to you how you phrase this, but I would say this, since you did become a pro later, and there was times when you were one of the better players, right? Here's the question. Did the teams before you got into Echo Fox, did they get it wrong, Damonte? Like you say there, if people were looking at talents, but you were just considered like a name that gets added to the mix and you don't get to go to the top. Did they get it wrong? Did they miss something about you? Did they not see what your skills were?
I don't know if they got it wrong. Like, I feel like for me at the beginning when I was like playing, I wanted to be a jungler at the start. Like my first I ever played on, I was jungling and I must have been like 16 years old. And I came into this meta where it was only Zac and Sejuani and you just rush Sightstone. So I was instantly just like, absolutely fuck this shit. I do not want to do that for the next like 10 years of my life. Like, it's just like the last thing I want to do. So like, I think around 2015, maybe a year before I started being pro, is when I just switched to mid lane. So I had a lot to learn. At that point, I was still just like, it's really funny how my career actually developed because back then I was this egotistical, kind of toxic solo queue player who was just really really good at mechanical champs. Like if you go look at my OPGG or my account from back in the day, it's like Zed, Riven, Yasuo, just like only champs like that, which I thought was fun at the time. And I think no, they didn't really miss it back then. People knew I was like decent and good, and I was also really young. So I think people thought that was cool. But then like I think once 2016, 2017 came, that's when everything really turned for me because I got to play on Echo Fox underneath Froggen. And I would say that was like career defining for me, being able to learn from him.
Before we get into that, let me just ask a follow-up, which is that would probably surprise people, Damonte, because first of all, I think part of your branding that you've been successful with on camera lines up with what everyone tells me from your teams. They told me the opposite. They told me like now you're like the ultimate vibes guy. You're like keeping the morale up and you're not toxic and you're like the good environment. So you changed? You were different when you were younger?
Oh, 100%. I think like I was a very insecure child. Like I was
Okay.
always kind of just like not very happy with myself, if I'm being honest. So I always turned to video games and just like my biggest thing was I just wanted to be better than whoever I was playing
Right.
against. I just like really only cared about that for a very long time. And I don't think I really had a reality check on like exactly who I was until maybe like 2017, 2018. And I really started thinking about it.
So as you say, the big break obviously came with Echo Fox. I mean, I'm going to guess when I looked it up and you played like X amount of gear. I'm guessing you initially played when he had like the visa problems or something. Like, is that when they initially inserted you into the team? What was the situation there?
Yeah, so I think in 2017 when LCS was doing best of threes, it was when Echo Fox was trying to do the frontline backline thing. So we had a 10-man roster.
Right.
And basically they just told everyone, okay, at least one series this year, you guys will all play.
Right.
So I think like Froggen was very unhappy with this, by the
Sure,
way.
of
Like he
course.
was just like, why the fuck is this kid
Yeah, of
playing
course.
for me? Like it's fucking Froggen, right? But I was like, dude, this is gonna be insane. LCS stage, holy fuck. Like I was ready for it. But that was like kind of when I got my debut. It wasn't like I was on the team
All
fully,
right.
but I got like one series.
Right. Give me the story then, because as you say, like I knew you played as like the other mid laner, but Froggen actually to some degree played a mentor role, or are you just watching him help you? Or something? What was it? What did you mean by like playing under him helped you?
Oh man, it's some good stories. Like, so we had this idea, or Echo Fox did, not like we, the coaches and the staff. They were like, okay, we had these NBA owners who were kind of like, why are we scrimming versus the other teams in the league? This makes no sense. And they were like, okay, we're gonna get this 10-man roster. You guys are.
Oh,
gonna
they
just
wanted it
scrim
to be
against
like an
each other."
NBA practice where you make like a B team and an A team and you scrim against each other internally, right? I say, right, right.
So we would just headbutt against each other for weeks on
Right.
end. And I don't think it was the best practice for everyone, but
Sure.
it like stunted my growth a ton. Like it just made me way better really fast.
Oh, right. Encouraged it, it sparked it. Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, maybe not stunted. Sorry.
Yeah, sparked the growth or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was just like every day I got to
Sure.
come to the office, play versus Froggen six games a day in a serious setting, and that like I learned what it meant to like carry a game individually then,
Right.
and Froggen was just like what he was good at was early lane phase. He would always just destroy you in early lane phase. He wouldn't miss CS. He would utilize his support and jungler really well to get in base timers, and
Right.
it just felt like he would suffocate you if you just don't know what to do against him. And I remember I was playing with like Don't Mash Me back then. He was on my team, and this guy would just like I absolutely love Mash, but back then he would just drill me because I just couldn't do anything against Froggen.
Oh,
I was
right.
just so I was so mental blocked, and like he started drilling me, and at some point I was like, all right guys, I'm just gonna pick Victor and farm, and. And I remember once I started doing that, I was like able to just like kind of match his like I just would not do too much in the game, and then we would start winning. And I was like, okay, I figured it out, guys. Like I just have to not fight Froggen.
Okay.
And then eventually that got a little boring, so I started kind of like building up. But that's kind of I think like after watching him and playing versus him, when I had my academy split, I think when if you go look back at the champions I played, it was a lot of carries. Like my best champ back then was Cassiopeia. I have like really good highlight plays on YouTube from that, and I remember like that was my champion, and then I think everything kind of changed the year after again.
Let me ask this question then, because actually one thing I was told about Froggen when he was in NA in this era was that actually a skill that he had that was actually quite rare in NA was people told me back then, it's probably quite similar now, that like the problem with mid lane was a lot of people just sort of like hand chuck the laning phase as it were. Like people didn't like, and they told me actually that's one thing that Froggen was pretty good at. He used to basically like press you on every creep and he would try and like play super, like exploit every, I mean obviously people know he wants to farm like a motherfucker, but he had like, it's kind of like, it's not easy to play against, right?
Yeah, he had a unique style because he back then the runes were a lot different. So he would go a lot of laning phase runes, and there are a lot of mid laners. They're like, that's just bullshit that he's doing that. It's only good for the first 5 minutes, which I thought that at the beginning too. But then after a while, you kind of like I realized this is how he is creating pressure in the map and in the game.
Right. What about if you're playing a team like that, though? The downside is, except for if they do a weird rotation like you're talking about, where they just give you a game, it is also going to feel like, how am I ever going to get in the team, though, right? I mean, essentially, if people remember, in that team, everyone used to flame it. It was only fucking Froggen. It was like Froggen and up-and-comers, right? They didn't really have big names. So if there's one spot that's going to be hard to replace, it's that one. I would wait. Does it not sort of limit how excited you can get that it's going to be hard to ever replace someone like that? Did you think if I showed off, I'll get like a different team will sign me or something? What was the headspace you were at?
Honestly, back then, all I really cared about was playing Academy. Like, I wasn't too focused on like, will I make LCS or anything? I was just super grateful, super happy to be in the league. I was just like living my dream in real time, honestly. I just felt like every day I woke up, I played League for 14 hours a day, having like the best time of my life, and I was like really improving, and everything felt like, wow, like everything is coming together, everything that I've worked for, and I wasn't really even stressed about trying to make LCS. I just kind of was feeling like, if I just put my head down and I learn from this insane opportunity, I should make it. Like, I don't see how I don't.
What happened? Because obviously, if people remember, the next year was the one where like Froggen was on like fucking Golden Guardians or wherever he'd moved, and then they made the lineup that was Fenix and you were sharing time with him. And obviously, initially, again, it was the veteran play. It was Fenix that was the starter. And people remember Echo Fox was really good that first split. In fact, sadly, I think people forget that they were probably supposed to win that split, even though it was the one that TL obviously came on and started their dynasty, right? But if people remember, then in the summer, they had that weird thing where they moved the people in and out. Like eventually they bought Smoothie, you came into the lineup. What happened with that? Like, how did because like I say, their roster in spring looked really set. Like that's just going to be for the rest of the year. How did you get into the team? Because after this, you became the starter, right?
Yeah. So in between spring and summer, we did a Korean boot camp, and I like exceeded expectations really heavily at the Korean boot camp. I was one of the only players that hit Challenger there. We did some scrims. I think we scrimmed G2 or Splice, one of these teams at the time. And I dropped an absolute nuke on like Aurelia or some champ. I went like 18 kills, and I think Inero at the time was a coach, so I think he was like, okay, let's try to split time with like Damonte and Fenix. I think Damonte is like got potential for sure. And how exactly did it happen? I think Fenix was like quite unhappy with the situation of like sharing a spot with me. I think he thought he was a lot better than me. Okay. So he was kind of just like, well, he was just not very happy. So I think that kind of played into the fact of like me getting pushed into the spot. I don't know if a lot of people actually know this, but when I was in Korea at that time as well, is when I actually I got competitive banned. And yeah, so if you look, yeah, the Riot article is still online, but I was being a bad boy in Soloq in Korea.
Flaming him or something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't very happy in a game with my jungler, and I think like we beefed, and he reported it to Riot Korea. Okay. So I remember I like woke up one morning and my account was banned, and at the time like Rick Fox and Jeffries were the owners of our team, like these two like 7 feet tall NBA guys. Okay. And I'm in a room in Korea. I go back to my hotel room, and Jeffries calls me, and he's just like, he just like lays into me. He's just like, why the fuck? Like, what are you doing out there? Like, how do you get banned? Just going in on me, completely just telling me how it is. And I was sitting there like, just completely shocked, honestly, because
it's pretty weird, right?
Yeah, I was just like getting railed by this guy, and it put me in my place at the time. Anyway, fast forward a couple days and everything kind of developed, and Riot decides to give me like a 5-game competitive suspension. Nice. And shoot, there's also, people don't know this as well, but Echo Fox also fined me 20 grand back then.
Fucking hell, 20K. That's like a real NBA fine, dude. Like, we're not making millions. 20K is a lot.
It was insane. It was a fourth of my salary. It was literally a fourth of my salary back then. So it was just like absolutely fucked. So fucked. And honestly, I because I went front page Reddit when I got banned, everything, I feel like the saying any PR is good PR, I almost felt like it played into that. Because I feel like people starting to like kind of know who I was. And then now I was the 6th man on Echo Fox, and then like everything just flowed really well. And then I got to like, I think Fenix kind of ended up, I don't know if he quit. I don't want to say that because I'm not sure if it's true. But I just ended up full-time on the roster in Summer Split. And suddenly I'm like side by side with Huni, Dardoch, Altec, and or no, I think it was Lost and was it Papa Chow? I'm
not sure.
need to look. I can't remember who the support was.
Adrian, apparently. It was Alltech and Adrian. And then it was, oh no, you're right. It was Lost and Papa Chow. You're right. Yes, it was.
Yeah, Lost and Papa Chow, which is an interesting roster, but it was so insane to start playing with Huni.
Who knows it was anyway, whatever. Here's a question I would have then. Similar to the question about the Froggen one. It sounds to me like in general you have always have like a very optimistic mindset. Because again, if someone's stuck behind Fenix, like Fenix is like a skilled player. People know him. He's a Korean player. He's been in team league. He's been in some top teams. Like, again, it's going to be a hard player to get past, especially because, as you sort of alluded to, your strength was never just raw laning. You're not just the mid laner who has like the crazy CS per minute mid, and then everyone's like, wow, you've got something. Yours are a bit more nuanced strengths. In fact, I notice in your career, it seems like it's the same sort of coaches who acknowledge what your skills are, and they bring you in and use you in their teams. So did you not again feel like, oh, am I going to get past this guy? Like, I feel like you're a good example of what I would say to all young players, which is, it's like what they say actually in the NBA, mate, which is if you're on the bench, just be ready if you get your call up. Like, the problem is you can never know when. Yeah, you might be sat there for 10 games, but if you get the call up, if you're ready, then you can show your skills off, right?
100%. I think something that I did very positively for myself was just try really hard to be objective in every situation that I can. I think like I would say the 2016 to 2018 era of my life, I just changed as a person entirely. Like I kind of said, I was more of like a individualistic, like selfish person back then. But I think as I came into team play, I realized very quickly that the one spot that I could just take over all the other mid laners in the league is just off of strategy and off of how I play with my jungler, how I play with my top laner, how I play with everyone on the team. Because I was just thinking like, okay, so I know Froggen is really fucking good individually, but I can still beat him because he's playing like to his own strengths to a fault.
Right.
Like he would play so heavily for himself that I was like, okay, he's gonna like kind of take away resources here from his team, there from his team. If I can survive and do this well, and then kind of like help my jungler do something, now my jungler is gonna be in ahead of their jungler, and I think I started finding like this. I just started finding the role in my team being more of a. I don't know, like I was more controlling just everything in the game versus just trying to play for myself, and that really got accelerated when I started playing with Huni, because Huni, I think he had experience playing with Faker the year before that he played with me. And I talked to him endlessly about, okay, what does Faker do?
Right.
Like, tell me, please. Sure. What does this guy do to make himself so good? And one thing that I always remember is Huni was just like, yeah, I basically don't have to say anything if Faker's on my team.
Oh, right.
And I was like, okay, that's a skill I need to develop.
By the way, there's a hell of a fucking gig as well. Like, yeah, you're just replacing for this guy, Faker. You just played with Faker last year, mate. We like won MSI or whatever. I have to fill Faker's shoes. That's pretty fucking daunting.
I didn't even think about it.
You took the right approach, though. Asking him's a cool idea. Like, ask him, what did Faker do? Like, how did he play? What do you want me to do? That's an interesting approach to take.
Yeah, I push everyone to do that. Even now in my coaching career, it's like I find myself still facilitating in every way, even outside of the game.
Sure.
Like, I think it's just a big, strong suit of mine is just put two people in a room and have me there, or like do whatever I feel like I can really get people to just talk about exactly what they want and not allow themselves to just like sit in a not go into detail about things. You know, I think the nuances in the details most of the time.
What about this then? Obviously, at this time period, the next year, the team became Clutch and it still had Huni. And people will remember that team actually had one of the most sort of like formulaic but worked styles of play. Like the specific champions you would pick, obviously certain Huni champions that you'd play, Rumble, etc. Right? People know you had the Qiyana mid lane, etc. People remember a few of the classics that were always like you could tell in the draft if you guys were going to do this. But I actually do think it was one of those styles, at least domestically, it definitely worked. Like it worked against most teams, quite frankly. So was part of this some of the things you're talking about, trying to be more of a facilitator or not just be just a mid laner alone? Was this feeding into why this style developed?
Yeah, so once Clutch Gaming started, we picked up LirA, and LirA was kind of heavy in this Korean style of playing League. And what a lot of that was for jungle at the time was he's going to try to get level 6 before the enemy jungler.
Right.
He doesn't really want to help his lanes much. He wants the lanes to be self-sufficient. And there was kind of another like defining moment for me that year, just in a scrim with LirA. and I was basically just destroying the enemy mid laner, just completely destroying him. And I was like feeling really good in the game. Like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna carry this game. And anyways, dragon spawns. I prioritize like pushing my lane, and the enemy mid laner gives up the 6 CS, goes and kills LirA. I think like after the game, he just like I was trying to fight with him that I was like smurfing or doing so well this game,
Right.
and then he just like looks at the screen. He just like points at the fact that other mid laner is there before me, and he's like, "This guy is playing better than you." And I just couldn't fucking handle it at the time. Like I was just like, "What is this guy saying? Like that's so moronic." Like I'm up probably 30 CS in a level right now, but he thinks this guy's playing better than me. And I reflected on that over time, and like that was another defining thing for me. It was like you don't have to be winning your lane to impact the game and like be the game changer or be that person that like really pushes everything forward.
Give me some thoughts on LirA then, because if people don't know, not only is someone that people who followed Korean League knew, but obviously before this, he was on that like envious roster where he was basically like, the best part of it. There was one where people remember flaming like Nitsky and that. He actually used to be really good. I remember he would like carry some of the games himself. Is it implied he was kind of a brain jungler?
Oh, 100%. LirA was, I think he was ahead of his time, honestly, with how he thought about the game. I think it definitely stemmed from like his time in Korea and how they all thought about the game then. But I feel like even to this day, when I'm like watching practice with FlyQuest, it's the way that Inspired plays is just a more refined way of how LirA played. And I think heavily like if I have a jungler on my team, I want them to kind of like be like this, or else I feel like you just can't match up internationally or against the best junglers. And that doesn't mean to just farm the whole game and do nothing, but it's to like be very strategic about when your laners actually need help.
Right. One thing I've noticed, even your coaches and fellow players would say, is when they were bigging up your skills, they would always start with like the backhand compliment. They'd go like, he wasn't the greatest laner. And then they'd say all the great things, right? So it implies they didn't think he was some like lane monster. One, do you disagree? Or two, I mean, if it feeds into the theme, I'm guessing, like you say, you learned to impact the game elsewhere potentially? Did they oversell they're not that good at laning? Do you think you were better than they were making out?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like, I feel like it's the easy thing to just like say, oh, this guy just did, he was like a role player. I don't think that was true my whole career.
Right.
I think, honestly, like one of my biggest regrets is like diving too deep into that play style, because I think after 2019, I was like, okay, this is how a mid laner should play.
Oh, right.
And then when in 2020, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened that offseason. I wasn't even in LCS after I went to Worlds, but I think I was like focusing too much on that. Right. And not having the same players around me, it just like made me worse, because I thought I had this idea of how the game should be played, but then I couldn't play the game how I wanted to be played, because the teammates didn't understand like what I was saying.
Right.
And it was like a negative feedback loop, because I started losing practice myself individually. So I think that was like a big that kind of went back and forth for me.
So in that scenario, essentially the problem is, to try and get to what you're saying, if you have the teammates to make the style work, this facilitating style is better. But if you don't maybe have the right teammates, sometimes you should have been a bit more selfish and just tried to be a bit more of an individual carry, you think?
I think this is like a big reason why NA is just not good as well, though, because I think so many people or so many players don't understand it. You still see it in the league today. I think like the bottom half of the teams, they just don't truly understand like what it means to play around tempo, what it means to like just help your teammates progress the game. I just feel like it is you're almost skipping a massive step in a team process if you go straight to this like, okay, this is how the best teams play, I want to play like this, without like learning everything from before. And I didn't realize that at the time playing with Huni and LirA, how actually developed these guys were strategically.
Dude, one thing actually, to pick up on that I was actually kind of shocked by is I'm amazed how many of the people I've done interviews with from this era, when he was in Echo, Fox and Clutch, and even a little bit beyond, dude, every teammate of Huni's raves about him. Like, because to me, I thought like, oh, you know, he was good in the old days where he was the Fnatic and the Immortals Huni, you know, and then in the league, admittedly, some of this is because from the outside it looked like he just only played certain champions, because to be fair, that's what the comps were based on. That made you think like, oh, is he just like a bit one-dimensional now? The key thing, like you're saying, is they don't just say like he was really skilled. They say his actual game knowledge was amazing, especially after T1, they say like he was actually very high level. So can you give me some thoughts on that? Like they're implying like he's kind of like the main part of this team.
Huni was he was so fucking good and smart without trying. It was like unbelievable, honestly. Like he definitely the vibe. I feel like I can say all this because his career is done and stuff. But he if he like he didn't give a fuck really. Like he was just in NA to kind of cash out and like end his career in NA, do what he can for as long as he can. Respect that it is what it is. But he just had such raw understanding of like the base game, honestly.
Right.
And he was so good at one being a good teammate. He wasn't very he was almost never aggressive to anyone. Very understanding. The biggest downfall of him is just like he like kind of didn't care about like playing solo queue or doing that unless like one of his managers was running his ass. But this guy was the CEO of most of the teams he was on, so it was just like. Yeah, I like he was just very, very smart, very nice, made you feel like a part of the team. And on top of that, he was really fucking good when he wanted to be.
Should this team have made it to the finals of that summer split and beaten TL?
No, I don't think so.
You think it's legit? Okay, you're not going to say you were robbed, okay?
No, so I mean, I think the way that we made Worlds was cooler than the way that the other two teams made Worlds, honestly.
Okay.
I think if like, when I look back at that run, because there was still the gauntlet back then, even in the regular season, we were, I think, like 7-9. So we had to win the last two games of the split to make playoffs. And then we grabbed the last gauntlet spot. And then we swept the whole gauntlet all the way from the bottom. I wouldn't go back and change it. And also, I do think Team Liquid was better than us back then.
Enough. Okay.
Like, so honestly, like, no, I don't think we really like deserved to win the trophy then.
Because I would actually ask, obviously, in this match you played against Jensen, and for me, that was when he was still sort of like prime Jensen. He was still like very good, right? What was prime Jensen like to play against?
Oh, he was suffocating. Like, honestly, I think like playing versus Jensen in the 2019 year, he was the only guy that I feel like I couldn't be better than, honestly. I back then, Akali just got reworked, and he wasn't even known for these like melee champions at all. But I remember playing against his Akali, and I was like, damn, this guy's Akali is so clean. It feels like I can't do anything versus him in these areas. Back then, his side laning, it was just like, honestly, it was ahead of mine. I think ahead of most people in the league. Jensen was just, I mean, it's funny because I still think he's pretty much the same player 5 years later, right now, that he was back then, which is like, it's going to slowly bite him in the ass. But honestly, at this point, he's had such an amazing career that whatever. But yeah, he wouldn't let you get anything back, and he wouldn't like. He's like a brick wall in the game, honestly. And the way that Team Liquid team actually played back then, that was when they won 4 trophies in a row. I remember like it just felt like they were the gods of the league. And I felt in the years after that, I was like, damn, like watching, there was no team that ever gave off that feeling to me again.
Like, obviously, in this era, one of your most famous things, I mean, the joke is people in League have got to stop that thing where we say colloquially one trick, and what we mean is just better on that champion. We don't really mean you only one trick it, but obviously, everyone used to say when you played Qiyana, right? Because the notable thing back then, Damonte, was, even though like every fan always claims every released champion's broken, dude, most pros, mid laners didn't even like this champion. Like, no one's fucking playing this. Loads of the Koreans didn't even play it. So like, what did you vibe with, and what was there some way of using it that other people didn't understand?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it goes back. Like, I love these assassin like champions. Like, that was always my thing for forever. And when Qiyana first came out, I was like, dude, this looks sick. And I played like 100 games of it, I think, in like a couple weeks.
Okay.
And instantly, I think I could tell, oh shit, no one else in the league has picked this up. Not a single other mid laner in the league. All 9 of them, no one played it. And I think I realized, like, okay, if I can survive laning phase, the spell that makes you go invisible, so your grass Q, just absolutely felt really unfair to me. You could use it on cooldown. And then the ultimate around objectives, it could go everywhere, and it was so huge. I was thinking, like, if you can get through lane phase, this champion cannot be balanced. And at the same time, it worked really well with the kind of champions that Huni was playing back then. I think people will remember he was playing a lot of Rumble, and LirA was playing a lot of Jarvan. And that trio of champions ended up becoming kind of iconic for us. And it felt like every single game they had to ban like Rumble and Qiyana no matter what. and then the third one was like up in the air for, I think it was like Gangplank or something else. But it just became like this like trio of champions that felt like we couldn't lose on.
Because along those lines, that's another thing I want to ask. As much as people, like I say, were sort of being dismissive by going, it's just one trick in that, people kept letting you get it. That was the craziest thing. If it had really been like the only thing you were good at, you think they just bad it. Why do you think teams let it through so many times?
Honestly, I think it's because of Huni, a big part of it, honestly. Like, if I was playing on that team and I didn't have a really strong top laner like Huni, I think that champion would have been gone every round.
Right.
I think, honestly, they probably would have banned my other champions as well. I think back then I was really good at Syndra and Galio as well. And yeah, I think they had to ban Rumble and Gangplank most of the games. So it gave me opportunity and openings. Also, I think one of the main players I was playing against back then was... back then the league was filled with these European mid laners still. And I think their egos were just too big to, like, honestly ban my champions. They were just like I remember playing versus Power of Evil. I played versus him so many times on Qiyana, and I won like every game. And it was just like, okay, if you guys aren't going to ban it, I'll just keep picking it, I guess.
Right. As in, like, they thought, like, this isn't a good champion, I could deal with it. It's like the ego move of thinking you're just not good.
Because it was truthfully, like, bad in lane.
Right.
Like, we thought as a team, if I could get out of lane phase down 10 CS, that's like a free win.
Right.
It was a free win, honestly.
Sure. By the way, people will know, because it became a meme, even though this gauntlet run was awesome, obviously it ends not that great with the Worlds thing, because the Worlds go 0-6, right? But we'll get to that in a second. On the gauntlet run, as you said, the gauntlet run is actually fucking epic, because as you say, you start at the bottom, you have to beat all these teams. By the way, these are all the teams that are really good, like that were mixing up in the playoffs. You beat them all, and then it's even more perfect, because at the end, you beat TSM, and like, if you're an old school league fan, mate, when you were growing up, like you say, it's got... That's like some of a movie to, like, in the basketball movie, you're against the shot 4 seconds on the shot clock. He shoots the last shot, Kobe. Like, playing against TSM's like the NA kid equivalent of that, right? That's the dream, to beat them and go to Worlds, surely. Give me some thoughts on this gauntlet run.
I mean, just playing versus Bjergsen, it was like, I looked up to this guy so much, and like my whole career, honestly, I had a way better time versus Bjergsen than I ever did versus Jensen. I think if you go look at the stats, I probably had like a 20% win rate versus Jensen and maybe like a 50 versus Bjergsen. But like, yeah, they just to win that series and to make that gauntlet run the way that we did it, I don't think I'll ever forget about it for my whole life. It was like the most. Even now when I'm talking about it, I feel like I'm getting chills. Like it just. It was another one of those moments where I was like, wow, I'm like living my dream truly. And I'm like competing against my idols. And I just fucking knocked out Bjergsen, the biggest mid laner of all time in NA, out of the entire tournament. And he's not going to Worlds now. I was like, this is crazy. That was definitely like one of my peaks for sure.
Was it a wild moment when you actually realized, like, I'm going to Worlds? Like, dude, I'm actually going to be out like the world champ. Was that a wild moment?
Yeah, 100%. I've only cried like 2 times after winning games. One was then, and then one was when we won the championship with Energy.
Oh, right. Sure.
Yeah. It's so surreal. It just feels like it's a feeling of like everything is worth it. Like, honestly.
Right. When I've done the interviews with other players that were on this team, I've always gone out of my way. So if people see those, they'll know the preamble. I won't do the whole thing here. But basically, even though, yes, you were the first major region team to go 0-6 and everyone's like, ha, ha, ha. I will say, if anyone goes back to look, you do have a really fucking hard group. Like, you do have a group where everyone's like, the other 3 teams are all playoff teams, basically. They all probably could have been in the play. So give me your story. What, like... We don't have to just do the results. What was the World's experience like? Like, was the boot camp thing work? Was there actually the logic that we could have won some of these games? Did it even seem doable? Did it seem like a group of death? What was the whole experience like? Give me it.
So basically, flying out to Berlin, we went to Berlin like a month and a half early before Worlds, and we just boot camped there. I had like the time of my life in US solo queue. I got really ranked. I got ranked really high, and I was feeling super, super strong coming into the tournament. We were honestly doing okay in scrims for like the first month. I think at this time, we all kind of started getting burned out because we were there for so long. So like, I think even before the group stage started, people were starting to get a little bit like just burnt out of grinding 24/7. I think once like the group stages came along, we definitely knew that we were in a hard group. We were like, okay, well, we got RNG and T1. So these 2 teams definitely felt they felt like gods, honestly. Like one team has Faker, one team has Uzi,
Sure.
and it was just like, okay, we're gonna give it our best shot. Like we were still, I think we were like diving into the delusion back then, like I think is actually a good thing for these NA teams, like to think that you can actually win. Because I think as soon as you think you can't win, then you're just fucked anyways.
Yes.
So I would say that the games that we played against T1 and RNG, honestly, we had a very low chance of winning them. And I think the games that we played against Fnatic, those games were like so winnable for us. Like both of the games, honestly. I was really like, even looking back at those games today, you can see how much of a fiesta a lot of those matches were. And now I have Bwipo on my team, and we were playing against Bwipo, and me and him like to talk about those games as well, because that was back when Reckless and Hylissang were playing Yuumi and Garen bot lane.
Oh, Jesus, right.
It's like, it was just the most bullshit ever.
Sure.
Like we were dominating the entire game, and we just could not fucking end.
They just can't kill him at the end,
like,
right? They're just unbeatable,
Yeah.
right?
Game went 55 minutes long, and they ended up winning. So, like, that game was like, to me, it was a fucking wash. I felt like we honestly should have won that game. It was like, I don't know. That game in particular just like kind of ticks me off. The other Fnatic game, I'm trying to think what I played. I can't even remember. But I remember both the Fnatic games. It was like, okay, wow, we're both like pretty dog shit. So either team could really win here. And I think Fnatic, didn't they ended up getting out of that group or something?
Yeah, they
I
went to
don't know.
top it. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right. One thing I want to ask goes like this. What's kind of bizarre to me is, didn't it end up being something weird? Like, so if people remember, Clutch sold to Dignitas, and then when they sold to Dignitas, for some reason, like you ended up under Froggen again, right? Because then Froggen was like the starter, and then you were in the academy team again. Why didn't you get to stay as a starter after the year you'd had in Clutch? What happened?
This offseason was like something else. It was one of the most like insane times ever, honestly. So like I think after Worlds, I was thinking like, okay, I am definitely going to be playing LCS next year. I don't really I don't give a fuck where. I wasn't even like, okay, I'm going to go and like ask for a ton of money to go play somewhere. In my eyes, I was like, okay, I just went to Worlds. I leveled up so fucking much. I'm ready to come back to NA, use everything I just learned over the last 2 months, and just like do my thing again. I think when Clutch got bought from Dignitas, that threw like a wrench into like the whole idea of, okay, we're gonna keep the core of Clutch, maybe get a new bot lane and move forward, or like get a new AD carry. I think that was the idea, and like keep me, LirA, Huni, and Vulcan. And anyways, that ended up not happening. So pretty late into the offseason, I think my details might not all be perfect, but I was like trying to look for another team pretty quickly, because I was like, okay, well, if Dignitas is like not giving me an offer right away, I need to like go like shop around. And I had basically zero luck. I think the only option I had was to go play underneath Ica on Immortals. So I was like, yeah, I was like, I had a bit of a culture shock, or like a shock moment. I was like, okay, fuck. Like I just went to Worlds. It's becoming apparent to me I might have to play an academy again.
Do you have any theory as to why that would be, though? Like, what wasn't translating? Did people just didn't appreciate you as a player or something? Because, like I say, the results pretty much demand you should be on the starting roster, right?
I think a lot of it was narrative based, honestly. I don't like, because for me, I actually thought I played decently at Worlds as well. I thought like my games that I played against Faker, Xiaohu, and Nemesis, like I really thought I held my own and played decently. Like I don't think I went there and just got shit on. Like by no means that's how I felt that Worlds went. So I think a lot of it was narrative based. I think a lot of people were like, okay, well this guy can only play these like 2 champions, and Huni just did everything for this fucking team. So I think that kind of like, I don't know, like brainwashed a lot of the GMs that year. But anyways, I like after I realized like, okay, fuck, like the LCS spots are now full. I knew that I wasn't gonna like stop playing or something. So I was like, okay, time to suck it up, go academy, put my head down, do the same thing that I did before. I know that I've done it before, I can do it again. That was kind of like my mindset now. Anyways, to get into the Dignitas like kind of fiesta, they ended up hiring. It's just so they wanted me to switch to AD carry at some point in that offseason.
Okay.
Yes. It was, there's so much like jumbled mess of that Dignitas offseason that was insane to me. So I think very early on in the offseason, they were like, okay, we're going to buy Froggen from Golden Guardians. And I think a big reason for that, I mean, honestly, at this point, his career was like falling off hard. He was obviously not like in my eyes, I knew I was better than Froggen at that point. So when I knew that Froggen was the Dignitas starting mid laner, I was like, okay, I can return to Dignitas.
Right.
I'll just like do my thing and like, no, like take his job again. Not like no harm to this guy, like not against him, but that was like my idea. Also, they hired Fenix as well. I don't even know if you know this.
Fucking hell, they just get all the people who were behind.
Yeah,
Okay. Like,
they just like hired me, Fenix, and Froggen.
Okay.
So now Dignitas has 3 mid laners. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck? So my general manager, he's like, yeah, do you want to switch to AD carry? I'm like, yeah, man, yeah, let's do it. Because like, I was just trying to fucking keep my contract at that point.
Yeah, sure.
Like I just wanted my contract and I was like, okay, like,
sure.
Like I don't want to go and make minimum salary in an academy team.
Sure.
Like, so okay, I'll just say yes. Like I honestly, I was down to play AD carry. I thought it was like, okay, this is what this offseason is coming to. Either way, Fenix ends up going to play AD
So that's how he did the swap instead, right? It makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah,
right.
We ended up getting Fenix to do the swap on AD carry. Also, I think that academy team that year was like,
it's a pretty good lineup.
The team was making like 500,000 like loss. It was insane how much that team was getting paid.
I mean, basically, people don't know every player like could be like a starter on an LCS team. Yeah. It's all like big names, yeah.
Yeah, it was like me, Acadian, Fenix, Ole, and
Lorlo, right?
Lorlo, yeah, Lorlo. Like we played academy. We went 8 wins, 0 losses, and our LCS team was doing awful. So at this point, I went and like talked to my boss, and I was like, okay, so are you gonna put me in or what? Like you guys are doing terrible, and I'm just sitting here in academy shitting on everyone. Like I put my head down and I just fucking did my thing because I was like, whatever. I feel like just being a bitch and like moaning about it, complaining about my situation is just not what I want to do. I didn't really respect anyone who like does that. I think if you just complain about your situation, nothing really gets fixed. So I was like, okay, fuck it. I'll go academy, put my head down, get it done. And at some point in the season, we're 8 wins, 0 losses, destroying everyone. LCS team is like doing terrible. And I sit my like boss down. I'm like, okay, like, can I play LCS? Like, you guys are not doing well. I need my spot back. And I basically run into complications, I think, trying to get my spot back because I think this contract, as far as I know, allegedly had a guaranteed starter clause for Froggen. And I didn't know that when I re-signed with Dignitas. Right. So now I'm sitting in academy playing against a player who can't be benched. And I just spent that whole split sitting in academy after I just got back from Worlds. I was like, all right, whatever. I finished the split out, and then that was when I got to transition from Dignitas to Golden Guardians.
Right, being as, if people don't know, at the time, the coach of Golden Guardians was Inero, who we've already has been mentioned in this story. I'm guessing he's one of the aforementioned people I implied, like, kind of gets your style and gets who you are and wants you. Was he part of the reason why you came to Golden Guardians?
Oh, for sure. I think he was probably one of the main reasons, honestly. I think me and him, we've always had a really good relationship, working-wise, outside of work. I think we kind of just understand our kind of like how we approach life and work very well. Like, I think we're both the kind of same kind of person who just wants to, like, no bullshit, just get things done. So I think we really respect each other in that way. So he put in like the most effort that he could to like get my contract from Dignitas over to Golden Guardians.
Right, let's get into, obviously, this playoff run was fucking baller in Golden Guardians. People will remember this was the playoff run that inspired 100 Thieves to buy like half the fucking team, basically. And famously, they built their own championship roster out of it. So if people forget, what happened was, in the first round of the playoffs, you guys just 3-0 swept fucking TSM. The TSM that obviously later in the story wins this split, like the one with double lift again. Like, this is a massive. Remember, the names on that team were fucking huge. Even Speaker, even though he was like a rookie, was mega. Like, this is a wild result. Can you tell me what happened with that? Like, going into that, did you guys really have any notion you were going to win this match?
We knew that we were fucking good sometimes. if that makes
Right,
sense.
okay, the keyword there.
we had like the glimpses of just absolute glory within our team where when everything was clicking, we could have I think we could have won that split. I was like more confident in that team, honestly, than maybe Clutch Gaming back like the year before. I was like, okay, our highs are really fucking high on this team. And I think me and Closer, like I clicked really well with like his play style. And I think that first TSM match, we just came in and we were all feeling ourselves in that match. There was like no like second guessing anything really. I do think the way that we won game 3, it was like some crazy backdoor. I think if we didn't get this crazy backdoor, I don't know if our mentals would have held up, honestly. Right. So I think the fact that we did end up winning the third game in that way, it made it like perfect. And it was like, okay, we had so much like confidence destroying these guys in that way. Even though like game 3 was a little shaky, but yeah, this roster, like we were really good. I think most of us were in our prime as well.
Because if people don't remember, in the lower bracket, obviously you ended up rematching TSM, and TSM wins 3-2. But like, you almost 3-0'd them again. If anyone goes and watches, not only was it 2-0 in the series, Damonte, if anyone watches game 3, it's so winnable, bro. Like, if you could replay those, I bet you in your brain you've replayed those fights. Like, you could actually for real have clapped TSM twice in the same playoff, right? I see why you say, by the way, you think you could win, because this team ended up winning the split. Like, you guys almost cracked them twice, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the game 3, I remember one of the last team fights in mid lane. I think me and FBI, we just like completely ran different ways, got split, and like just both of us died for free or like something of the sorts. And yeah, I think like from that moment we were just like almost shattered. I think a lot of like this team was the first team where I was like kind of a veteran, honestly.
Right.
Like I feel like I was surrounded. I mean, Huni was definitely a veteran, and Hanser as well. But kind of like with Closer and FBI on the team, I was like, okay, I need to fill a role much more of like the bigger brother this time instead of a little brother, and like that was a really fun time. And yeah, I mean it's such a bummer because I feel like if we win that series, everything is like so much different. Honestly, I feel like it's actually crazy. Like it's. I mean,
even if you didn't win the split, you could be at Worlds. Yeah, it would totally change everything in your career potentially, right? I mean, maybe you get signed to 100 Thieves in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I did end up going to the 100 Thieves, but yeah, it would have just been a massive slap in the face to everything that happened to me the split before. Because honestly, I still at the time was like feeling a bit spiteful for how the offseason went. I mean, I think I really dropped all of that eventually because I was like, carrying this baggage is so useless. But yeah, that was such a bummer, honestly.
You can answer, though, a question I have thought many years and no one's ever answered it. I've never asked any players on air, to be fair, so I'm going to ask you it. In game 5 of that series, and actually something he did in the whole playoffs, Bjergsen did that like super cynical move he started to do in his latter years where he would just pick Zilean all the time, even though I can tell, like I never ever thought the other team should just ban it because the logic is at the time, like no one fucking plays Zilean at that time. Like if you go watch in Korea, then like maybe you'd have the odd, I don't know, BDD might play it once and twice, you know, but like it wasn't like some power pick that like it doesn't dominate lane, it doesn't dominate the game. Like the problem with that champion, basically, this is why I always thought it was effective in NA though, is it's one of those ones where if you know how to play against it, it could be really bad. But if anyone has any misunderstanding of what it can do, and I mean in NA, Bjergsen tortured teams with this pick. Like I feel like, no joke, off the top of my head, it feels like he almost never lost if he picked this in the games, you know, like somehow we used to joke on some of the insight. It felt like he mind controlled the other team into just playing. It's like people would actually forget they had the ult. You know what I mean? They would like chase a kill and then he would just resurrect someone and win the fight or something. Like, give me some thoughts. Why was it so tricky for teams to play against this Zilean pick, do you think?
So everyone knew, or at least my teams knew exactly what Bjergsen wanted to do and what he did. So his whole idea was, okay, if we ban LeBlanc, I can play Zilean in any matchup. That was like his yeah, that was like his entire thought process. I was like, okay, as long as LeBlanc is not in the game, I don't think any of the mid laners are gonna like pick Yasuo or anything like that could just shit on me in lane. So he was just like, okay, I could like go even or lose lane and be fine and carry like win on Zilean later. I think a big reason like people don't like the ban phase is just so much more strategical than I think people think, because I think if you waste a 1-2-3 ban on Zilean and you're playing against I can't remember who we were playing against exactly, but I just like throwing it out there. Like maybe if you're playing against like Core JJ or like any of these players who just have like specialty picks in like a meta, you have to focus those more because it's going to have a bigger game impact early on.
Yes.
Whereas like Zilean, they could pick it, but if you're playing well as a team, it will be relatively useless until later.
Right.
And like you just have to like weigh the positives and the negatives in that sense. So yeah, honestly, I think like for the reason we didn't ban it, honestly, me and FBI are pretty good friends and still give Inero shit to this day for not banning Zilean. Because like I mean I think Inero hasn't gone to Worlds yet either, so like that was like the big opportunity for him.
Right.
So yeah, we just always clown him for that, and then yeah.
As you said, by the way, earlier, obviously, if people count it up, you have got a fucking. Here's the joke I would give you, Damonte. Right? If we're gonna say that in the LCS, Bjergsen was Tom Brady, then you were like fucking Eli Manning or something. You're like the one weird guy that just got him a few times. Because the amount of times you had good seasons against this guy, it's actually quite a lot of times, right? Even when he has the better roster.
For sure, yeah, for sure. I think like, I don't know. I always felt like, honestly, I understood exactly what he wanted to do, even way before he like fell off a lot harder.
What were his strengths at this time, do you think? Like, how do you play against Bjergsen ideally?
He was very consistent. Like, he would not use his teammates in negative ways almost ever.
Okay.
I think he was just always farming really well, always team fighting really well. He at this time, I think after 2018 is when he stopped being a lane dominant player. So I think in 2019 is a big reason why I started having a better time versus him, because he just stopped focusing on all of that. So in a lot of ways, honestly, I think me and him started to become similar players.
Right.
And in that sense, I think I understood what he wanted to do so well that I could just do the exact same thing. And at times I would just do it better. And that's why I think like my matchup against him specifically was honestly one of the ones I always looked forward to, because I think I just really understood what exactly he wanted and how to stop him from doing that.
One thing I would also throw out there, I want to get your take on it, is a bit like you said earlier about how actually NA teams, if you go to Worlds, you should be delusional, think you've at least got a chance that you can battle these teams and they're not really gods that are up here and you're down here. I always got the similar vibe with you. I think I even told you this on a show back in the days. Like, another thing I always thought sucked is, like, sometimes there were teams that should have been able to beat Bjergsen's teams, but I always felt like in the playoffs, people treated him like he was Faker if they were in NA, you know, like they kind of already went into the game thinking they'd lost, like, well, can I beat Bjergsen? But it seemed like you always had like a very healthy mindset to compete against him.
100%. I think like it's something I even preach to my players now that I'm kind of like more of a mentorship role. It's like at the end of the day, you deserved everything you got to be on the same Summer's Rift as the guy.
Oh, that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
You know, like you
Yes.
you got here the same way they got here. Yes, this is maybe someone that you looked up to, but there's no better feeling in the world than playing against someone that you look up to and fucking beating them. Like there's really not much of a better feeling, and it's something that I wish like everyone could feel at some point. Like having a someone like a mentor. Honestly, I mean, maybe not a direct mentor, but for me, like Bjergsen was that mentor, and like to just know that you're there with him. It doesn't fucking matter who he is once you're in the game. Like it's just League of Legends. So.
Don't you know I'm still standing better than I ever did? And that's in part thanks to my Patreon community, the Illuminati. So this video was kindly supported by Frisky, Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Ahmed Haju, Jensen Go, Tobias Bernasconi, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Toucan, Tosh, and you know it if you've ever seen my videos before. If you don't get to know it, because a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest? Maybe you want to see who the upcoming guests are on my shows, on my interviews. Or do you want to be part of one of those lengthy esports discussions where you set the table of topics? Well, if any of those perks or others catch your fancy, put your money where your mouth is and join the Illuminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box.